Today I'm going to show you another permanent modification that you can make to an Edelbrock carburetor, but with that said, you should never, ever, 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 ever do this. And now that I said that, I'm going to show you how to do it. So there are a number of reasons why you think you may need to modify the nozzle to get the amount of fuel you need quicker into the carburetor. We'll talk about that in just a quick second. But really, before you get moving here, you really need to go through all of the other steps within the tuning process to make sure that that is your final try or your final solution to something that may be another problem that you haven't addressed yet. Step-up springs, metering rods, jets, they're all part of the process. And don't forget about ignition timing. Timing is one of those very neglected things in here. And if you work through the whole tuning process, and as long as you have the carburetor sized right, you should be able to do this without making this modification. However, there's a couple of instances where this may be necessary, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. But tune with an AFR for stuff like this. You can do this a little bit of seat of the pants, but quite honestly, the shot and the changes that you're going to make here are very, very minimal, and you may notice a little bit of it, but really an AFR is the best way to tune with something like this, because then you'll know whether or not that change that you made was right or not. Now let's review what we're working with here. There are two sets of nozzles here. Ignore these for just a quick moment. There's two sets. One that comes stock within the carburetors, which are 3 different sizes, and then a kit you can purchase if you need a different timed amount of fuel in a different kit. So in the stock sizes, you come with a 28, a 31, and a 35. In the kit you can purchase, they come with a 24, 33, or 43. And what that allows you to do is kind of give you some different timed events there for the shot of fuel and see if you can come with it. Now, I know Edelbrock spent quite a long time with this. I think part of this was testing that the original Carter folks had done. Honestly, between these 6 sizes, you really shouldn't need anything else. You don't need to go bigger. The 43 thousandths squirter, there's no reason to open that up to a 45 or a 50. Let's just go ahead and assume that these 6 sizes are all you're going to need. Now, what do you do in that instance when you've got, in this case, a stock size, but you don't have access to this 14 or this 3-set nozzle set from Edelbrock, which is currently the situation as we sit right now. These are on back order. Reason being is Edelbrock is only making the sizes that need to go into production carburetors because that's most important to them. Getting somebody a carburetor is far more important to them than stopping production and making the nozzles. They do make all of these in their Sanford, North Carolina facility. They're cast there, they're drilled there, they're assembled in the carburetors there. So I can understand it. I know folks are frustrated with that. It's very, very difficult to get it, and this may be your backup. If you can acquire some additional sets of nozzles, it might be the best way to go. Drill your own. That's what I'm going to show you how to do today. Now, I hope you've made notice of that I've mentioned that a number of times. We're not getting a bigger shot of fuel with a nozzle change. What you're doing is changing the amount of time that the accelerator pump takes to deliver that shot. The pump size and the lever on the accelerator pump is how you change the amount of shot that you get. All as the nozzle does is tell you how quickly or how slowly that shot will be delivered to the engine. So let's make sure you understand that first, because it's a big misunderstanding that when you need to get more fuel, you just put a bigger nozzle size in, it'll take care of it. Now, if you want to review the other accelerator pump videos that I've done talking about the pump and the nozzles, I'll leave a link to that video up above so you can go watch that as well. But for now, we're just going to concentrate on how to modify these. Now let's talk about actually making the modification here. I'm going to move these sets out of the way because we don't need them anymore. Now what I have here is a mix of different sizes, and I'm going to go ahead and try to find a 33 that I know I have in here. There it is right there, because that's the one we're going to end up modifying, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Here's the thing: if you're trying to get to a 43, because that's the one you're trying to make, try to find the size closest to it. And in this case, it'll be a 35. The 35s come in the 800 CFM carburetors, and sometimes they're a little bit more difficult to get a hold of. But hey, if you've got cores laying around, or if you've acquired a few of them over the years, that's fine. I've got tons of them, but in this case, I'm going to show you how to modify the 33. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, and that's okay, but you have to be very careful with it. So I'm going to show you the inside, really, of what this looks like. So what I did is I took and hacked up a 28 here just to show you how that works. So let's take some random sizes here very quickly. This is a 33. I think that's actually a 43. Here's a 28. Okay, so when we talk about drilling these out, you're going to have to come up with some bits to do that. One thing that commonly I get asked about, and I think it's a common mistake, is when someone looks at these and go, well, I'm looking at the hole diameters on all these and they look all the same. They are. The reason being is because the tool that they use to drill these out once they're cast at Edelbrock there in Sanford is it drills through there. It drills a little orifice at the bottom. These sizes are all the same. So if we take this size bit that I've already secured, it's the exact same in all of these. Fits in there and has a nice little wiggle. It's because that tool that they use drills out the same. So you're not drilling out this, it's much deeper in there. And that's why I cut this away so we could take a look at it. You've got quite a bit of distance that fuel travels outside of the orifice size, and that's what you're modifying, is that size that is deep down in there inside of it, and that's what you have to drill out. Now the good thing is it's not very deep. It shouldn't take too much effort to get that out of there, but it's down in there a little ways. When you have a regular nozzle, or a nozzle that has the discharge tubes on it, a little bit different. The orifice size here is at the end of the tube, not down in there. The tube is just pressed down into there, and that's the size of it. Now, the other thing on this is don't ever shorten these up. Reason being is if you shorten these up, you're going to get the fuel discharge too close to the wall of the Venturi. You want it out into the airstream so it will get moving down into the engine and give you the shot of fuel that you need without dragging, without slowing down. You're trying to get it into the airspeed so it will give you the fuel on demand as you need it. So don't ever cut these down. Don't ever shorten them. Don't ever cut the tips off of it. Yes, it would widen the orifice on this fairly easy if you just cut the tip off of it, but what you're doing is you're affecting how it flows within the Venturi. Don't want to do that. Now, these are both modified in the exact same way. If these are both 35s, they're not, but let's just assume they're both 35s and you're trying to modify it, you will use the same bit. You'll just do it a little bit differently. Like I said, the one is modified here, the other one is modified much deeper within the body. Now, when you make this modification with the drill, you're going to need to leave it out of any tool. You don't want to use a device to hold on to it. Makes it a little bit easier, I understand, but what that does is it is applying torque to that bit that you might not want to see. So if you use this bit by hand, what that will do is it'll keep you from over torquing it down. If you get into a situation where it kind of sticks a little bit, you can back it off, retry again, and keep working it until you get that size punched through to where you need it. So always use it by hand, just nice, easy, gentle rolling with the fingers. The other side of that is when you buy the mini micro sets of these drill bits, you can get them, and I'll leave a link down below to a couple that I bought here recently so you can see. But when you buy these, unfortunately, they come in a pretty large package of bits, and you're not going to read, obviously, because there's nothing written on it, but they're very, very decent sized ones you can put your hands on pretty easy, all the way ones down to fairly small. These are really, really made for precise. The problem is you're going to have to use a set of calipers on it to get the exact size that you need to make sure that your result is. Now, all of these are in millimeters. You'll have to convert that from millimeters over to thousandths, so it's not that big of a deal. You can use an online calculator if you want. But again, it's just making sure that you have the right size before you get started. I've already measured out. Here's two different ones that will fit the same size we're going to do to try to modify one of these into a 43. Now these are the two types of bits that were in that kit that I bought, and it's important to understand here. Now if you're using it on this type of nozzle that has the discharge tubes on it like this that are pressed in, you can use either one. If you have a nozzle that is like this, that it's completely cast, then you have to use a different bit. If you look and see this one here, but when it starts to get to the stepped portion here, it does not go deep enough to get down into the orifice to drill it, so that one won't work. You'll need a bit that's at least an inch long, and I think this one's like an inch and a half or an inch and 3/4. I can't remember the measurement, but it gets you full the way down, so you can make the modification on that orifice size and be able to get all the way through it. So just something to be understanding of. Use the right length bit. Now this is a 1.1 millimeter bit, which is a size that you're going to need if you want to go to that 43 thousandths. Here's the difference between the two. If you don't have a 1.1, but you have, say, I've got a 1.2, that's close enough. That will open that orifice up to 47 thousandths. Big difference there. And one, like I said, keep it under 45. It's what the engineers have designed. Now, again, it may work out okay for you. I just don't know that you're going to get any benefit out of it. So let's go ahead and modify this again. This is the 33, so this is going to take a little bit of effort. Again, we're going to go down fairly deep in there before we hit our orifice, and then it's just a matter of gently rolling this thing until you can start to feel it grab on there, and then start to remove some material. It's going to take a little bit of effort here, but again, when you get stuck with it, you want to be able to stop and say, okay, that's enough, I'll back out of it, clear out whatever debris is in there, and keep going. If you need to twist the body, that's fine, but literally you just want to modify this with your fingers. I can already feel it catching and removing material, and that's all you need. It may take you a minute or two. Again, we're using a very large or a very small orifice here on the 33. With a 35, this would be a little bit easier, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So always use a size nozzle as close to the final size that you're trying to get. I've been working on this one for a couple minutes. I'm going to show you what it looks like here and how much material it's removed out of here. Hopefully get a good close-up on this black mat so you can kind of take a look at it. Yeah. You can see there's a decent amount of material that we've removed out of there. Now I've punched just barely all the way through. Yeah, I think I'm all the way through. And again, you can kind of tell if that bit's in there a little over an inch or right at an inch, that's probably deep enough. You'll feel it when it pushes through. It's just kind of one of those things where you kind of get used to it after a while, but you may need to get a couple of these to do some practice on, but you'll get it figured out. You'll know when it goes in there. Like I said, it's just going to remove a little bit of material out of there. And once you get it done, then you just move on to the next side. Make sure it's cleaned up. Keep any of the big chunkies out of there, and you're good to go. So that side is definitely done. Nice and easy. And again, the reason why we don't use the tool on here is because you just have to be very careful. Again, if you break the bit off, then you're out of bit. If you screw up the nozzle, no big deal, huck it, find another one, whatever. But it's the bit, so not ruining the tool is what you're trying to do here. And with a little bit of finger work, you can do it. So, if you have to use the tool, just be very, very gentle with it and don't try to force it. I mean, you'll get a lot more torque with it, that's for sure. This is a lot longer process when you're doing it by hand, but it'll definitely get you the result you need. So let me modify this other side, and we will come back here in a minute when I get her all ground through. This one's fighting me a little bit on this side, so I'm going to show you how to use the tool in case you need to. Now again, you can really put some torque on this thing, but what you need to do is as soon as you feel it to start catching, and before it gets to that point where you've gone too deep, just go ahead and back out of it, clean it out. You can see a little bit of material came out of there, and that's all you're doing. You're just trying to make sure that you don't torque the head of the drill bit off. You certainly don't want to do that. I don't want to do that with this one. I'm going to try to use this one. So again, just keep cleaning it, and Again, you just have to be much more careful if you're using a tool, because again, you can crank through this thing pretty quickly. So just take your time. I mean, it's going to be a lot more effort using the tool. Maybe a little bit easier on your hands, but certainly you can see the chips are much smaller on this one, but we're just trying to be very, very cautious as we drill through here. Not put a lot of pressure on it and keep cleaning it out. Okay, we've got our 33 permanently modified here. Now the best thing for you to do is to mark somewhere on here, scratch the 33 out. I usually try to use this area right underneath it, so if I X this out right underneath, so scribe or a tip of a knife, whatever, just so you know that this is now a 43 and it's been modified. So whatever you need to do to mark that, it's a good idea. So now that we've created our 43 here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and modify this one as well. Now I changed the bit out. This is a little bit larger size, and this is a 43 that I'm going to open up to that 47. So this is a little bit more difficult because you don't really have the length of the nozzle here to discharge tube to kind of guide you with it. It's all done right here at the very tip. So if you want to continue to use a tool, do that. But this one's a little bit more complicated, and you just have to make sure that you're going in straight. And I just barely caught it there. And again, same thing. You just want to be very, very cautious. Keep going back and forth, and we're already starting to make good progress. You can kind of see on there the depth of that. Now the nozzle isn't that full length, but you're going to have to get through a decent amount here to clear that out of here. So the other side of it is these tubes are much harder material than aluminum, so it's even more important that you be very cautious with how you're going through this. That way you don't screw this up. And again, you just try not to modify the length of it. You're just trying to go straight through it and get in there so you can make it into a larger size. Just slowly grinding it down. You can kind of see some of the material that's come out of there. We'll keep going till we get through. Now when you're modifying this one, it's a little bit easier. You'll know you'll push through because it will instantly drop. Oh, like there, see how it dropped in there? So now we know we've modified that size. Don't want to go too much more than that. Just clean it up, make sure there's no material left behind, whatever. But we're just trying to make sure that we got everything kind of cleaned out of there. And that one size now is at 47 thousandths. Again, little too big for what I want it to be, but maybe I'll try it out on something. I know from experience that it's diminishing returns. You're not going to get anything better out of it by delivering that shot of fuel any quicker. In some cases, you're even worse off because you are delivering too big of a shot too quickly, and the engine can't process it. So there's not enough airspeed going through the Venturi to break it up enough to do any work with it. So I'm going to go ahead and drill this other side and then get it sorted out. And that way I can mark this up that it's a 47 and kind of an oddball in my kit. And we can put her back in the box. So I hope that gave you some tips on how to modify these. We finished up again with a 43 and a 47, and just remember to make sure you mark those so you know what you have. But it's not a complicated process. Again, I'd always caution in using the tool. The aluminum is much easier to use than the brass tubes that are in there, but just be very careful. Take your time. You don't want to break anything off in there. You want to have a nice usable piece when you're done and be able to modify that carburetor if you need to. Again, I would caution in making this modification. Most of the time we can tune out of that and that modification isn't needed. But if you get to that point where you must do it, or in the case that we're in right now where you've got a bit of a back order and you need to make a 33 or a 43 and there's no nothing out there on the market and you need to do your own, then as long as you can get a core available that you can modify those tubes. So anyway, I hope that made sense. If you got any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below. And yeah, we'll try to answer any of your questions on it. Not that complicated, easy little deal, but wanted to show it to you. So anyway, we will catch you guys on the next one. We'll see you.